All right, George Kramer, rated 2404. These are USCF ratings, by the way. He's not as well known as some of these other names, but he was the New York State chess champion in 1945, the Manhattan Chess Club champion in 51 and 52, and he's a three-time New Jersey State chess champion, 64, 67, and 69. He, even though he might not be as well known, seemingly he does have a defense named after him, Kramer's variation in the King's Indian Defense. And I believe he's still alive. He was born May 15th, 1929. I couldn't find any obituary on him, so that puts him at 94 years of age. He starts with Retti's opening, knight f6, a King's Indian attack with g3, symmetrical defense with g6, both sides fianchetto their bishops, the so-called king-side fianchetto variation, d3 right here, d6, and this reverses the usual move order, which castles first and then d6, but Bobby played d6 first. It doesn't really matter. Castles, castles, e4. And here we have a transposition to a Sicilian defense with c5. Quite interesting. So that makes c3 the delayed Alapin variation. Knight c6, and here Kramer played knight e1. The book move is rook e1, and then we play e5, a3. And the most common move is h6 here. Even though the bot doesn't like it, it's the most frequently played in that line. If you don't like the book move, I have played knight a3 before in this position as white, and the idea is to come over here to c2. Knight e1 from Kramer, rook b8, pawn f4, knight e8. I thought black might try bishop g4 here, make that knight come back, and then you can continue as normal with moves like b5. But Bobby played knight e8, very common. We've seen him play this before. It allows f5, it allows the knight to reposition to c7. Bishop e3, bishop d7, knight d2, pawn b5, pawn e5, pawn takes pawn. b4 could be played here. Let's see. No, pawn takes pawn is the best. Bishop takes c5 right here, and f takes e5, the move being called for. That gets answered, no doubt, by knight takes. Yep, and then bishop takes, I would think. I'll play rook to c8 and put the question to that bishop. No doubt he'll take my a-man, and then I'll reintroduce my knight into the position. However, in this game, bishop took c5 straight away, and pawn took the f-man. Rook takes the f-man, knight to c7, b4 here, maybe? Probably not. If you play b4, I could just ignore it and maybe play d4. Knight c7 is the move. Rook backs up to f1. Yeah, you know what? I'm surprised that gets a star, to be honest. I would rather keep this square available to my knight, to my queen, maybe even to my rook later on in the game. So I would play... Ooh, I get an exclam. Oh, it changed its mind. I would play the rook to f2 and keep that square vacant. I mean, you may even need to relocate your bishop in some lines. Anyway, rook f1 was played, b4 was played here. Didn't like b4 when I played it, but now it gets a star. I guess the point was when I played it, there was a rook on f4, so okay. You might even can play knight e6 first before playing f4. Oh, nope, that gets the big red X. Anyway, my thought was push the bishop back, and then you can still play b4 here. All right, Bobby played b4, queen c2. Bot calling that a mistake, calling for rook c1. I would think another move here would be d4. Pretty thematic. d4 and white's Hakuna Matata. Inaccurate. Yeah, changed it to question mark. Well, in spite of my 2 double exclams today, I have not been doing too well otherwise. Queen c2. Pawn takes the pawn. Pawn takes pawn. Now knight b4. e5. Knight e6 again would push the bishop to e3. See what it thinks of this. Finally I got a star. And a really interesting move here is to exploit this pin and hit the queen. Okay. Anyway, knight b5. Yeah, you heard that on Remote Chess Academy with Igor Smirnov, didn't you? Well, he didn't play it here. You don't have to remember. I'm telling you that's who you heard it from. I know as a fact that's who you heard it from because I've seen that same video. Grandmaster Igor Smirnov, Remote Chess Academy. I highly recommend his videos. Famous for the quote, "It's a mistake to take," Smirnov is. Here, Bobby did not put the question to the bishop. That's what I've been talking about. So I don't know when Bobby may or may not have when did he adopt that philosophy is the question. He surely didn't put it into practice here. But knight b5 still gets a star as well. It super attacks this pawn, doesn't it? So d4 and now rook c8, getting in line with the queen. The bot says go ahead and take the pawn. Now that is interesting. And the point is after takes, if you decide to trade here, you've cooked your goose. That's a blunder. So Bobby with rook c8 missing the tactic, and queen b2 is marked as a blunder. The bot calling for knight to b3 defending the pawn. I might prefer to just take the knight if I were in white's shoes. So what does it think about bishop takes? I get a thumbs up. I do get a thumbs up for that. Take it what the rook says. I love getting on this strong diagonal though. Anyway, queen c2 gets the double question mark, and Bobby knight takes c3. So he saw the tactic, he just saw a different approach to the tactic. Double exclam for Fischer. Queen takes knight here, knight ef3 being called for. Knight ef3, if he plays knight ef3, we just play knight a4 right here, and then take his bishop, Forcosaurus. Anyway, queen takes the knight. He accepts the sacrifice. And now knight takes d4. Of course, you've got to take it because my knight's coming to e2 with the fork otherwise. Forcosaurus Rex right there. All right, here, queen b4. Knight e2 is played anyway. a5. Yeah, well, that's definitely interesting. a5. That's quite the move. And where are you going to put your queen? If you play here, my knight drops back to hit the queen and discover an attack here. If you play queen b6, asking for a queen trade, I'll still give the check. Yeah, there's no good thing, nothing good to do. So queen b4, check, and yeah, you've got to move into the corner. You dare not come out into the open. Because if you come out into the open, he played king h1. But if you play king f2, I get to take your bishop with impunity. The point is, is that 4? Is that my 4th one? My point here is you cannot take, because forget the rook, I now have a Forcosaurus Rex with my bishop. So you'd have to play something like, I don't even know what. Well, anyway, you have to play king h1. You played rook takes bishop anyway. Fischer, the master of simplification. Queen takes the rook, and bishop takes his rook before he can escape to b1. Knight e to f3, bishop to g7, escaping the rook. So rook e1, hitting the knight. Knight c3, queen takes the pawn. The bot calling for knight to e5, knight to e5, and I'll take your a-man. So queen takes the a-man, bishop to e6, pawn a3, queen d6, queen a5, bishop d5, bishop d5, knight b1, queen b4 being called for. Look at the eval bar lunge on knight b1. Well, Bobby did not take the knight. He played rook to a8, hitting the queen, and then queen b4. Queen takes queen, pawn takes queen, bishop takes knight, knight takes knight here, bishop takes bishop, check, and black resigned because he's going down a full piece and a pawn no matter what. by the way, you don't want to take that knight first because then it's almost equal, right? Not only is it almost equal, but you have opposite colored bishops. All right, so I do have 2 extra pawns, but with opposite colored bishops, it should not be enough. So that is the best move and the winning move, and Kramer resigned. And the point here, of course, is you're in check, so you got to take it, right? And I think I'll throw the check before. It doesn't really matter. I could take this because I'm hitting his rook, but I can throw the check either way. But the point is I'm now up a bishop and a pawn. So Kramer resigned. Really nice game by Fischer.